From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Well, good afternoon, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Library of Congress. I'm Mary Jane Deeb, Chief of the African and Middle Eastern Division, and today it is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome to the library His Royal Highness Prince Ermias Sahle Selassie. It is the first time that a member of the imperial family of Ethiopia has graced the hallowed halls of the Library of Congress with their presence, and certainly the first time that a member of the family will make a presentation on its long and prestigious history. As many of you already know, when Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia was crowned on November 2nd, 1930, his titles included King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, and Elect of God. And so we're all very much looking forward to hearing about the Lion of Judah. But now may I introduce Dr. Peggy Perstein, head of the Hebraic section, where the collection of Ethiopian material lies. Dr. Perstein.
Good afternoon. As Dr. Deeb mentioned, I'm Peggy Perlstein. I'm head of the Hebraic section in the African and Middle Eastern Division of the Library of Congress, and our wonderful collection of materials that are here are part of the Hebraic section. And before this presentation today, His Royal Highness Prince Ermias Sahle Selassie came upstairs to the African Middle Eastern Division, and our reference librarian in charge of the materials, Fentahun Tiruna, made a wonderful presentation of manuscripts, newspapers, maps, and contemporary materials. So we're very pleased to have the materials here at the Library of Congress, and we encourage you to come and use them. As I mentioned to the Prince, the collection is used, but we're always happy to have other people come and make discoveries as well. And so now I'd like to turn the program over to Fenta, who will introduce the Prince.
Thank you very much, Peggy, for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. This is a program I have been looking forward to for a long time, and I'm very, very thankful for His Royal Highness Prince Ermias for accepting my invitation. I would like to begin by a statement about myself in relation to the royal family. If admitted, I would like to include a bit of personal history, that I was a participant in the opposition to the monarchy in the university days, in my university days as a student. I do not want to engage in criticizing the educational system in the Haile Selassie University that I was engaged in for failing short of instructing its citizens with their true history. But I will admit there was a general ignorance in the academia in the knowledge of the long and glorious history from the dynastic Cushitic sovereigns to the Solomonic line of sovereigns. It is it's sort of cathartic to me to have the princes of Ethiopia with me in one hall to remind each other to once again archive, document, and preserve this glorious history for posterity. So I'm so happy that we came together finally. I will now begin to introduce Prince Ermias. His Royal Highness Prince Ermias, President of the Crown Council of Ethiopia, is the only son of His late Imperial Highness Prince Sahle Selassie Haile Selassie and Her Imperial Highness Princess Mahisente Habte Mariam. The late Prince Sahle Selassie was the youngest son of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Menen of Ethiopia. His Royal Highness Prince Ermias was born in Addis Ababa on June 14, 1960, and lived in Ethiopia for a considerable part of his early life, where he had his primary education. He continued his studies at the Old Ryde Preparatory School and then at the Haile College in England. He graduated with an undergraduate degree in the social studies emphasis in economics from the University of California in Santa Barbara. He continued his education at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy between 1983 and 1985. His Royal Highness is the father of two sons, Prince Sahle Selassie and Prince Fessahatzion, born on February the 20th, 1992. Prince Ermias has a diverse professional background and has been deeply involved in the development and institutionalization of democratic principles and market economic philosophies in Africa, particularly in the Horn. He is an active member of the expatriate Ethiopian community in the United States and actively follows issues related to the Horn of Africa. In 1993, Prince Ermias was invested in exile as the president of the Ethiopian Crown Council, the body which acts during an interregnum as the custodian of the crown and which during the reign of an emperor acts as the principal advisory body to the crown. The appointment was made by the late Emperor Ermias Selassie I. Upon his installment, the prince has traveled extensively and met with a dozen heads of state promoting the welfare of Ethiopia and Ethiopians. In 1998, he briefed the United States Congress on 2 occasions regarding the prospects for peace in the Horn of Africa. This included a special briefing to the United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee on October 14, 1998. In 1997, His Royal Highness was named recipient of the International Strategic Studies Association Silver Star Award for outstanding contributions to strategic progress through humanitarian achievement by the worldwide NGO, the International Strategic Studies Association, for his accomplishment in supporting Ethiopian refugees. His Highness is patron of the Haile Selassie Fund for Ethiopia's Children, Incorporated, a US-based non-profit charitable trust which raises funds for causes which aid Ethiopian children, including scholarships. I now call upon His Royal Highness Prince Ermias Sahle Selassie to the podium to give us his presentation on the Lion of Judah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends, scholars, and distinguished guests. It is my great honor and privilege to be here with you today in the renowned Hebraic section of the United States Library of Congress, African and Middle Eastern Division. To begin with, I will share with you an ancient Ethiopian saying: "We must study the past and understand the present to charter a better future for us all." I must tell you that I am not a theologian and make no pretense at being so. Indeed, some, perhaps many of you, already possess extensive knowledge of today's subject, the origins and religious symbolism of the Lion of Judah. Consequently, I will initially introduce the subject and hopefully end with a robust question and answer period, which I anticipate will prove both entertaining and enlightening for all of us. It is with great reverence, humility, and some concern I come before you to discuss and explore this topic. My concern springs from the certain and harsh knowledge that whenever poetry and magic of myth is interpreted as biography, history, or science, it is frequently mortally wounded. The living images become only remote facts of a distant time or sky, and it's never difficult to demonstrate that as science and history, mythology is in a large part absurd. Thus, when a civilization begins to reinterpret its mythology in this way as biography, history, or science, the life goes out of it. Temples become museums or tourist attractions, and the link between the two perspectives is dissolved. In modern times, arguably, such blight has even descended on the Holy Bible, both in the Old and New Testament, and a great part of the Christian movement. The late and renowned American mythologist, writer, and lecturer, Joseph Campbell, has observed that symbols are simply the vehicles of communication, and that they must not be mistaken for the final term, the tenor of their reference. Thus, no matter how attractive or impressive symbols may seem, they remain but convenient means accommodated to the understanding. Hence, the personality or personalities of God, whether represented in the Trinitarian, dualistic, or Unitarian terms, pictorially or verbally, as documented fact or apocalyptic vision, no one should attempt to read or interpret them as the final thing. The abiding challenge of the theologian is to keep the symbol translucent so that it may not block out the very light that it's supposed to convey. For then alone do we know God, writes St. Thomas Aquinas, when we believe that he is far above all that man can possibly think. Thus, mistaking a symbolic vehicle for its tenor can lead to spilling not only of valueless ink, but also valueless blood. To bring the images back to life, one must seek not interesting applications to modern affairs, but illuminating hints from the inspired past. When these are found, vast areas of half-dead iconography disclose again their enduring and permanently human meaning. In the Jewish tradition, the earliest reference to the Lion of Judah comes from Genesis, in the first book of the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, and the Christian Old Testament. The book of Genesis is generally considered to have been written sometime between 1400 and 1440 BC. In Genesis chapter 14, verse 9, when blessing his son Judah, the Jewish patriarch Jacob refers to Judah as the young lion. Thus, here we first note the lion becoming metaphorically and symbolically paired with Judah and the Jews. It is also from this text that the Lion of Judah further evolves into a titular station or office, defender and leader of the Jewish tribe, which itself becomes the basis of considerable messianic expectation and speculation in early Judaism. Indeed, King David, the Jewish Messiah, becomes inextricably and historically linked in the Judaic and Christian tradition as the reference for the Lion of Judah. We frequently find lion gates in archaeological ruins, from Israel to the gates of Ethiopia's Aksumite empires, palaces, and temples, to the Hittite sites in Turkey, to the Babylonian and Persian sites in Iraq, or the Assyrian and Egyptian sites. It was widespread and popular symbol of royalty, as the lion was seen by many as the king of the predators, or even as the king of all the beasts. In fact, we know that Ramses II kept live lions, as did successive Ethiopian emperors, including up until the time of my late grandfather, the last emperor, Haile Selassie I. In ancient Jewish art, we often also find lions depicted in protective roles, guarding the Ark of the Covenant at chapel entrances, as in the sculpture of the ancient synagogues at Sardis, Horazim or Baram in Palestine, and in many of the mosaics dating from the early Byzantine era. In medieval Jewish art, the lion pair is commonly depicted leaning up on either side of the tree of life next to the crown. Thus, it is the heraldic shield replaced by a symbol of God, and the lions are seen as serving the King of all kings. In modern times, the Jewish heraldic representation of the city of Jerusalem remains the venerable Lion of Judah. In the subsequent Christian tradition, the lion allegory persists in the New Testament book of Revelation, chapter 5, verse 5. And one of the elders said unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, had prevailed to open the book and to open the 7 seals thereof. Although the dominant image of Jesus in Revelation is the slain, but now the triumphant Lamb, the Apostle John continues to employ the powerful and traditional lion symbol. In Revelation chapter 5, verse 5, it proclaims that the Lion of the tribe of Judah has already triumphed, not through final judgment on the wicked, but rather through his atoning death and opening up the possibility for all of us to be saved. Christ, therefore, is worthy to unseal the judgment scroll because he has already achieved salvation through his death as the slain and sacrificial Lamb of God who takes away the world's sin. Theologians generally concede that the symbol is read and understood as direct reference to Jesus, where he is regarded as the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the Root of David. In Christianity, the Lion of Judah symbol is commonly used to refer to Jesus Christ. In fact, many Christian ministries use the symbol as their emblem or prefix to their names. Christians believe that while the ancient tribe of Levi prepared priests, that of Judah was the tribe of kings. Jesus is believed to be descendant of the tribe of Judah. Jesus is commonly referred to as the overcoming one and the one qualified to open the scrolls and the 7 seals. According to the book of Revelation, Jesus was the sacrificial lamb and the Lion of Judah. The prophecy of the coming of the Lord to judge the world as the Lion of Judah is clear throughout Revelations. As the Earth's oldest independent nation, Ethiopia traces its unbroken history back to more than 5 millennia. The earliest records of Ethiopia around 3000 BC, just prior to the Egyptian Old Kingdom, came from Egyptian traders who referred to the lands south of Nubia as Punt or Yam. The first known Egyptian voyage to Punt occurred in the 25th century BC under the reign of Pharaoh Saure. The most famous Egyptian expedition to Punt, however, comes during the reign of Queen Hatshepsut, probably around 1495 BC, as the expedition was memorialized in the intricately carved reliefs on the temple of Der al-Bahri at Thebes. There are also numerous references to Ethiopia in the Old Testament of the Hebrews and the Christian Bibles. As the Old Testament is to the Hebrews or the Quran is to Islam, the Gebre or the Book of the Glory of Kings of Ethiopia is the ancient and revered repository of our country's millennia-old national and religious history, as well as our constitution. More than 700 years old in its present and written form, the Gebre derives from Ethiopia's millennium-old oral tradition and details the history and origin of the Solomonic line of Ethiopian kings. It is also regarded to be the definitive authority on the history of the conversion of Ethiopia to Christianity. The Solomonic dynasty of Ethiopia is so named by the virtue of the dynastic descent from the union of the venerable Jewish Messiah, King Solomon of Israel, and the Queen of Sheba more than 900 years BC. By Ethiopian dynastic tradition, all monarchs must trace their lineage back to Menelik I, who was offspring of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. In 1930, my late grandfather took the title His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, King of Kings, conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, and elect of God. These titles had been traditionally given to Ethiopian kings to recognize the Old Testament emphasis of Ethiopia's Christianity and to declare the region's sacred duty and subservience to God. That is why frequently Ethiopian monarchs refer to the psalmist quote, "Princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall stretch her hand unto God." In Ethiopian tradition, Menelik, who had returned as a young man to visit his father Solomon in Jerusalem, was regally received. When Menelik departed to Ethiopia, King Solomon, who was very pleased by the regal manner and demeanor of his royal offspring, ordered the chief priest and advisors of the kingdom to send their first sons with him for the benefit of the Ethiopian crown, which Menelik would eventually inherit. Among these was Zadok, the high priest, who is claimed took the Ark of the Covenant with him. The theft was concealed from Menelik, who did not learn until the party had returned to Ethiopia. The symbolism of the Ark is particularly potent in Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Every single church must contain a replica of the Ark before it can be consecrated. One of the most important festivals in the calendar of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is Timkat, during which the Ark, or the replica thereof, is wrapped in shroud and carried in great processional reverence. The Gebre Neges relates this marvelous story of how the Ark of the Covenant came to Ethiopia, where it is believed to be enshrined in the special treasury at the chapel of the tablet constructed next to the church of St. Mary of Zion in Aksum. It is reported that the Ark was moved to St. Mary's into the chapel because of the divine heat from the tablets had cracked the stones of its previous sanctum. Indeed, my late grandmother, Empress Menen, had paid part of the construction cost of the new chapel. The Church of St. Mary of Zion in Aksum is a venerable icon of the Ethiopian religious belief and legend. It is also the most important church in Ethiopia. St. Mary is dedicated to the Holy Mother Mary, who in the Christian tradition was the vessel of Christ, and thus the fulfillment of religious prophecy. Adherents believe that when Mary was exiled in Egypt, that she had also visited Ethiopia. The original St. Mary's Zion was built in the 4th century AD and has been destroyed and rebuilt again. Ethiopia was a respected and sophisticated empire in the time of the New Testament. In fact, the Ethiopian eunuch, in the 8th chapter of the Acts of the Apostles, returning from a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, is the first Ethiopian to be baptized by the Apostle Philip. We learn that he is the keeper of all the treasure of the queen, who is named Kandaki, her regal name. Thus, the eunuch is actually identified as the queen's treasurer, a position of supreme confidence in the royal household. It is likely that the queen was told of this unusual religious encounter when her Begeron returned, and thus the news of the Christian gospel had reached Ethiopia long before the official adoption of Christianity as the religion of Rome and the Ethiopian crown in the 4th century. Written records from about 800 BC to the 1st century BC are confined to the names of kings found on carvings. However, the Aksumite period is relatively well documented. The Aksumite kingdom represents a significant peak of Ethiopian civilization, which spans the era of conversion of the ruling dynasty to Christianity in the 4th century AD. It was also considered a very advanced civilization by the Roman Empire. In fact, the Roman Emperor Constantine had declared that citizens of Aksum were to be considered equal with the citizens of Rome. Constantine and Ezana, the Ethiopian king of kings, made Christianity the respective religion in their kingdoms. In the ancient and revered tradition of the Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, there have been 3 traditional symbols of demonstration and manifestation of humanity's intimate relationship and connection with the divine, and that these are called the 3 Zions. The first Zion is the Temple of Solomon in Israel, which according to the Bible is the first temple in Jerusalem's Jews and is thought to have been constructed around 832 BC. During its history, it was repeatedly attacked and sacked, and according to Jewish religious traditions, before its final destruction by Rome in 70 AD, the temple had in Solomon's time been repository for the fabled Ark of the Covenant. Subsequently, Jewish scriptures say that the ark will remain hidden until God gathers his people together again. The Jewish faith today believe that the Temple of Solomon will and must be rebuilt before the coming of the Antichrist. Indeed, contemporary Orthodox Jews pray 3 times a day for the restoration of Solomon's temple. Adherents of the Orthodox faith in Ethiopia believe that according to prophecy, when the temple is rebuilt again, one door is reserved for the Lion of Judah, for Christ to open it up again. The second Zion, which I have already discussed in some detail, is Mary, the mother of Christ, and the church at St. Mary of Zion in Aksum. The third Zion is the Lion of Judah, who represents the return of Jesus Christ in the fulfillment and biblical prophecy of his coming to rule again. Since the 4th century AD, all Ethiopian sovereigns have given their crown to the church at St. Mary of Zion, in traditional adherence and submission to this belief. In fact, the Ethiopian imperial crest depicts an empty throne, waiting in expectation for the return of Christ and the rule of the right and justice. The Rastafarian movement is a contemporary monotheistic political religious movement which had evolved in the slums of Kingston, Jamaica, from fundamentally Christian roots and culture. Entrenched towns mean an overweening environment of poverty, depression, racism, and class discrimination. The Rastafarian message of black pride, freedom from oppression, and hope of the return to the African homeland had found fertile soil. And within this milieu in the 1930s onward, that the Rastafarian movement developed its own distinctive style of language, hairstyle, art, and music. Although popularly believed to have originated on November 2nd, 1930, with the investiture of the Emperor Haile Selassie, Rastafari has actually been inspired in the 1920s nationalist movement founded by Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican publicist, organizer, and black nationalist, considered by his followers as a prophet and the second John the Baptist. Though there is a significant variation within the Rasta movement, there is certainly no formal one singular organization. Undeniably, some Rastafarians see Rastafarian as a way of life more than a religion. Rastas do not claim sects or denominations, but encourage one another to seek faith and inspiration within themselves. The central and uniting theme, however, of this highly diverse movement are the enduring belief in the divinity and messianicship of Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie, the influence of Jamaican culture, resistance to oppression, and pride in its African heritage. For Rastafarians, Haile Selassie is considered to be Jah, or God, and is seen in both the reincarnation of Christ and the lion mentioned in the Bible's book of Revelation. He is therefore referred to as the Lion of Judah. Beyond biblical allegory and metaphor, Rasta also see the lion as being the symbolism of strength against oppression that they have endured over time. Thus, for Rastafarians, the lion is both symbolic and iconic. The lion can be found on the Rastafarian flag and on many other items associated with the Rastafarian faith. The name itself, Rastafari, derives from the pre-regnal title given to Emperor Haile Selassie, literally meaning head or leader, Tafari, before he took on the name Haile Selassie. Adopting from the heraldic lion symbol of the biblical Lion of Judah, from which the Ethiopian Solomonic dynasty is descended, Rastafarians believe that the lion represents Emperor Haile Selassie as the King of Kings and reveals the unbroken lineage of the emperor from the 12 tribes of Israel. The most famous Rastafari, Bob Marley, through his unique Rasta perspective and music style, painted compelling utopian pictures of how life should be lived and how the world could one day become. The late C.S. Lewis, the famous atheist who subsequently became a renowned convert to Anglican Christianity, was an accomplished contemporary author. Lewis has made marvelous and inspired use of traditional religious symbols and allegory to produce his iconic 7-book and movie series written between 1949 and 54, the Chronicles of Narnia. Lewis has said that the entire Narnia story is about Jesus Christ, and that he had offered the lion as a lamb as an answer to the question, what would Christ, the Son of God, be like had he been born in the land of Narnia instead of being born in Bethlehem? The Anglican Lewis has richly infused his Narnia series with very Christian beliefs. For instance, the theme, The Voyage of Dawn Trader, the third of his books that has been made into film, employs very Christian themes of temptation, sin, and redemption. Through the intricate tapestry of Lewis's enthralling fiction and theater, we are provided contemporary interpretation of ancient religious symbols and allegory, which even uniquely perhaps provide the perfect example of Joseph Campbell's thesis that symbols are simply vehicles of communication. In concluding, I would like to tell you that I have tried to tread lightly and carefully as possible while engaging with and conveying my personal appreciation for these cherished and venerable symbols of traditional religious allegory. I pray you will understand and agree that I have done no serious or irreparable damage. Indeed, it is my fondest desire that at least some of you will be motivated to continue to explore these profound and transcendent mysteries, for they are undeniably inspiring and worthy of further consideration and study. For Christian Ethiopians, our transcendent religious symbols are links to our constant reminders of our rich Judeo-Christian and Islamic heritage and past. As such, these precious religious icons endure with us today in the imperial iconography and within the holy sanctuaries of the many Ethiopian Orthodox churches, and serve as constant and enduring reminders that we are all spiritual kinsmen with a universal duty and obedience to God. After all, it is myth that awakens in us to the mystery of the universe and presents us a consistent image of the order of the cosmos. It is also myths that validate and support a specific moral order, inform us of the proper governance and conduct of our lives, and transport us through the passages and crises of life. Ultimately, we must each find our own path through the forest and reach for our own transcendent personal spirituality by studying the poetry of life. It is only in this way that we come to personal contentment and understanding. The heart, as Joseph Campbell has reminded us, is the beginning of humanity. In his comments on spiritual kinsmanship, my late grandfather had once said, "In the mystic tradition of the different religions, we have a remarkable unity of spirit. Whatever religion that they may profess, they are spiritual kinsmen. While the different religions in their historic forms bind us to limited groups and militate against the development of loyalty to the world community, the mystics have already stood for the fellowship of humanity. In harmony with the spirit of the mystic of the ages gone by, no one should question the faith of others, for no human being can judge the ways of God." I would like to add that unless and until we begin to internalize these wise precepts of spiritual kinsmanship, loyalty, unity of spirit, enlightened governance and leadership would forever remain an illusory and unattainable reality. Thank you again for your kind and generous attention, and I'll be very happy to entertain any questions. Thank you.
can take a few questions. We have plenty of time. So, any questions that you may, or comments that you may have?
Your Highness, I'd like to commend you for an excellent presentation in action commitment to science and governance. Would you like to comment about this notion of the land of Judah now being shared with the people of Israel, Ethiopia, and not only with the Americans for the last movement, seeking really to connect with the divine, with good governance, especially now we have so much corruption, economic crisis, political crisis around the world. It appears that humanity is seeking some form of justice, some form of egalitarian system. I know this is a bit difficult, but even though our ancestors did that from a Christian perspective, really in our day-to-day life today, the concept of mythologies like this have a special place. And in fact, science, the whole concept of this Big Bang series of the universe really stems from these mythologies and knowledgeable literature from the past. How do you pursue this in the light of future generations?
I think the line of Judah symbolism is probably one of the most misunderstood icons that has reached us in its rich tradition from ancient times. It has also come into popular culture, but very few understand its true meaning or what the wisdom it holds. My perspective on your question would be that people should really study and try to understand, the richness of these symbolisms, and ultimately maybe have that to reflect as a mirror to themselves and to their own spirituality. We live in very troubling times and anxious times, and I think it's up to us to find our own spiritual way, at least to have a grounding and a foundation and a realization that this is an inheritance that has come from generations past that can be a very useful guiding tool for today's multifaceted problems.
Thank you very much for this preview of the line of Judah, sort of in the Ethiopian context. The symbolism of the line of Judah, of course, is monarch. And I'm just wondering what your ideas are about where this symbol stands today. The monarch is gone, the lodestone central focus on Ethiopian institutions. Is that gone? Where is the line of Judah as a symbol of the Ethiopian society?
It's an excellent question. I think perhaps it didn't come clearly in the paper presentation, but the crown was one of the pillars alongside with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church that had manifested the Lion of Judah as its symbolism in Ethiopia's civilization. Unfortunately, since the revolution of 1974, the Ethiopian crown was abolished. But thank God, despite its significant test during the communist period from 74 to 92, our church is a living one and is an active one, and hopefully a keeper of these traditions. My hope is that in the future, Ethiopian will realize the value of their history and the importance it has, is connected to its faith, and give the crown its special reverence where it could begin to serve its people again. Yes, I did.
So you were living in Ethiopia at that time?
Up to 1972. So I was about 14 when the revolution happened.
I'm not sure if you already addressed it, but I wanted to find out what your thing means. That would be reverence that Rastafarianism all over the world to get to Emperor Haile Selassie.
Yes, I have been very privileged to have also traveled throughout the Caribbean. And what inspired me really the most has been that the monarchy is not seen as an elitist institution, but one that identifies with the oppressed and the masses. And to see the youth in the Caribbean especially espouse these beliefs and find pride in an institution like what the Ethiopian monarchy had stood for. It stand against foreign invasion. It stand against discrimination. These are really remarkable and inspiring thoughts that I've encountered. And it's also been really largely through the Rastafarian movement that the Ethiopian history has now become publicized to a new generation of people perhaps who wouldn't in no other way have learned more about Ethiopia than through popular culture and music.
Thank you, Highness. I wanted to ask you, it's a little bit off the subject, but the Lion of Judah is very much a masculine concept, and yet it is in a way the Queen of Sheba and Solomon. Was there an equivalent in Ethiopian tradition, equivalent to the Lion of Judah? You know, on the woman's side, you know, as a descendant of the Queen of Sheba, is there a female embodiment, a symbol in Ethiopian tradition that would descend from the Queen of Sheba?
There's none that descends, but the reverence given to Mary as part of being the three Zions and her becoming the vessel for Jesus' birth, as had been prophesied, is what keeps also a big reference to Mary, and hence the St. Mary of Zion in Aksum, which is the most revered of all churches in Ethiopia. So outside of Queen of Sheba, there had been not many queens, but a few great ones. Queen Judith comes to mind, Queen Mentawab, but unfortunately it's been a rule of the male descendants belonging to the Solomonic crown.
I just want, I'm sure you've seen this is the latest National Geographic that talks about searching for Tibet. It appears in here some pictures of Ethiopian chiefs as the descendants of the Lion of Judah. Can you reflect on that, especially now most of the Ethiopian Jews have migrated back to Israel in the context of the mythology that when the Messiah comes, the land of Judah that was in Jerusalem, and the Ethiopian Jews already are claiming this.
It's fascinating. I think it speaks highly to our common heritage mostly. And the Falashas are the traditional Jews that had come in ancient times and have preserved their religion despite its many tests and complications, had managed to keep their faith and are now living in Israel. But my sense is they are part and parcel of our historical package, and that, you know, I don't foresee there will be any problem, except it's just a question of identity. They have awakened more than perhaps we have back in Ethiopia.
My question. Since you are the president of the Crown Council of Ethiopia, what is the council doing, and what is the history behind the formation of the council? If you could tell us.
That's a good question. Ethiopia has changed a great deal since the revolution of 1974, and we're cognizant of that fact. We understand that Ethiopia today, despite it being traditionally one of the oldest Christian countries in the world, is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society. And as such, we accept the Ethiopian constitution and the rule of law. The position of the Ethiopian Crown, nevertheless, looks at the Ethiopian Church, our heritage, preserving our culture, and we are now in talks with the government as to how we can become more actively involved in Ethiopia's future development. Many have mistaken the movement to seem that it's a movement to reinstate back the monarchy. No, it's simply a movement that is screaming that our heritage must be respected and that the younger generation just have as much right as the ones preceding them to learn about their glorious history.
There are no more questions. We thank His Royal Highness Prince Ermias for coming, and I thank you for coming. Please give him a hand.
Thank you very much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.